The 1.5 anniversary is going on right now in KOTR stores, and we got a bunch of brand new updates for the game, and in this video I'm going to go over all of those. Now many of you might be thinking, well, this is about the Japanese version and I'm playing the global, so why would I want to hear about this? Well, that's technically true, but eventually we will get those updates in probably 2025, so I figure it's best that you know about that right now. Plus, everyone keeps asking me, hey, could you give us updates on what we should expect for future pilots in the game so we know what to summon from going forward and things of that nature. So I will finally be able to do that in this video. With these new updates, that means that my comprehensive guide for the game is technically outdated, so it only makes sense to go over the new updates. So with that out of the way, let's go over all the new updates in KOTR Lost Stories as part of this 1.5 anniversary event. Let's start with the basic updates to the game. Normally in a guild, you can post a sticker as a message so other members of the guild can see it. Now they've added even more stickers that come from Akito the Exiled, since Akito the Exiled was a big part of this 1.5 anniversary update. So we got new stickers now, which is nice. In addition, there are new loading screens that have images from Akito the Exiled and Oz the Reflection, even including images from the magazine, which is really cool. And I'm glad they're adding that stuff in there because obviously this game is not just about R1 and R2, but the entire extended universe. So having those new loading screens is another way to show this. Then we have some updates to the training room, which kind of address the problems, but not really. So what they have done is a couple things. For starters, when you select a room you want to start the training process for, it'll now default to 12 hours instead of 1. Which is really nice. I have no idea why they ever made it 1 hour to begin with. Nobody in their right mind would start with 1 hour if the goal is to train the units in the long term. I still don't know why that was even a thing. They also added a button that will start the training for all 3 rooms at 12 hours, which is really nice. I've also noticed that after training expires, either because the time ran out or because you use a skip ticket, the process of going through each room is much faster. Now I said at the beginning that these new changes to the training room were good, but they don't really address the problem. And what's the problem exactly? Well, it takes too long to go through all the skip tickets. So before this update, you would have to select the room, select the hour, and then confirm. That's 3 clicks. You have to do that for the other 2 rooms. That's 9 clicks. Then you have to hit a button to go through all the rooms. So now that's 10 clicks. So we have 10 clicks to go through 3 skip tickets, which means if you have 300 skip tickets, that's what, 100 clicks, which is a lot. And here what they have done is reduce the amount of clicks you have to do, but you still have quite a lot. Now it's, I believe, 1 to get everything going, then 1 to skip through all of them. Then you still have to confirm the training is over for each room. So what is that? That's 5 clicks. So if you have 100 tickets, that means you'll have to do 20 rounds of clicking, which isn't the worst, but it could be a lot better. All they had to do was add a simple function where you select how many skip tickets you want to use, which rooms you want to train with, and how many hours per each room, and then just have it simulated for you. Go through 10, 20, 30 tickets, however many you'd like. You can even put a cap on it for maybe 10 to 20 tickets. That'd be so much faster. Now, if you just start playing the game, this is totally fine because you won't have too many skip tickets. But if you're someone like me who's been playing the game for over a year and a half now, and you have hundreds of skip tickets, this doesn't make the experience that much better. Yes, there are less clicks, but you still have to go through the motions of the same monotonous process over and over again. And that sucks because I'd rather do other things in the game like, I don't know, playing the missions and not going through a training simulator. This kind of reminds me of Genesis RE Code, where you had to go through the most asinine method to level up the characters or the code links. It's the same crap where you have to keep going through the same monotonous process over and over and over again. And while I'm glad they improved the training room, it could have been so much better. This is their 3rd attempt now at this, or 2nd, I'm not sure, one of the 2, I believe. And we still don't have a good, solid training room. All they have done is try to limit the problem, a band-aid if you will, and not actually address the issue, which is really frustrating because the next thing they added actually does address the problem, which is the boss interrupt. Now there's a button you can hit which will prevent it altogether because the bosses are kind of annoying in the game, not just to defeat them, but the fact that when they appear, you have to know about it. It has to interrupt the whole gameplay for them to appear. You can skip it by hitting a button at the top, which they added in the last update. But that still wasn't enough, because if there's 10 bosses coming at you at one time, you have to hit that button 10 times. And of course, in the global versions, even worse, because they don't even have that function yet. So now they finally made a button where the bosses will just appear, you'll be notified they were by a simple icon, and that's it. No more interruptions in the game. And while I'm grateful for this, one has to ask why this was ever a thing to begin with. Did anyone really think that, yeah, the player's gonna love it when we interrupt the gameplay to throw a boss at them? How about we do that like 6 or 7 times within the same map? And they're gonna love that. Like, said no one ever. Why would this even be a thing in the game? I have no idea. And it's so frustrating that it took them a year and a half to realize this, even though, let's be honest, it's common sense. Anyways, moving on to the expedition levels, they've added a new difficulty setting, which is the very hard. So now we have easy, normal, hard, very hard, and extra. And I believe that if you clear extra, you'll also clear very hard. What's the purpose of this difficulty setting, you might ask? Well, I think the complaint that players have, myself included, is that extra is too difficult. That's like for whales only. If you don't whale, don't even waste your time. And the hard is, it's okay, but if you have a pretty good team, you've been playing the game since it came out, or relatively around that time, it shouldn't be too difficult. There was never this happy medium of where I'm being challenged with my powerful team, but not to the point that you want to quit the game and punch a hole in the wall because of how frustrating it is. So I think this very hard is to give players that nice challenge they want without driving them insane. I haven't tried very hard yet in the new expedition levels, so I can't say for sure how it stacks between hard and extra, but I imagine it's some happy medium. I'll let you guys know when I actually play it. One nice thing about this new difficulty in the game is that there are even more awards now for the expedition missions. So that's really nice. I'll take more of that. So in theory, this new expedition difficulty should be pretty good. The next thing they added is this new functionality where, let's say you're playing an extra mission and you realize it's too difficult to complete. Well, now you can use this new ticket that'll make all the enemies much easier to defeat and allow you to complete the mission, obviously, much easier. I don't know if that means you can't get S rank in it. I imagine you still could. Otherwise, what would be the point? I have no idea, unless this is expedition mode, and in that case, I guess it doesn't matter. Otherwise, the tickets seem absolutely pointless. Another thing that I'm not sure about is if these tickets are going to still be in the game after this current event ends. I would assume they will be, but I don't see them in the stores. But I assume they will be. It's an interesting concept as long as you can still get an S rank. If you cannot get an S rank, it's kind of pointless and only useful for expedition mode. So I said that the theme of this event is Akito the Exiled, and that's because we got brand new characters from Akito the Exiled, plus the first chapter that covers the first OVA of Akito the Exiled. Remember that there's only 5 OVAs, so they have to be very careful how much they space out the different stories, which I imagine they're going to do every couple of months. This chapter includes both missions, of course, and the story component. And I really like the story component because it includes extra stuff that we didn't see in the anime, like Ayano's sister, so I think that's pretty cool. The missions themselves are okay. There's also these new challenge missions which are kind of cool because of the limitations, like only rank 3s or only certain pilot types. I kind of like that. It's a nice way to change the pace of the game. What I don't like is the awards only a Nightmare Frame upgrade egg. I would have liked something else, but hey, it's better than nothing, I guess. So as I said before, this new event has brand new characters, so let's go through which ones we got. There's a brand new Akito, which includes the Alexander, which for some reason has better stats than the Gurren Mark II, which makes absolutely no sense. I'm not going to go on a rant about that particular prompt, but you guys know how I feel about it. Akito himself is really good, and so is the Alexander, which includes both weapon types. Also, I'm kind of concerned with Akito being a rank 4. Are they going to make Ayano, Yukiya, Ryo, Ashley, and John also rank 4s? I hope not. They should be rank 3s. And I think Janissary Code had that correct when they made them rank 3s, but we'll have to see when they come out. The new Anna and Claus are not terrible, but their skills only really work within the W0 unit, so obviously they're meant to be used together, and so once we get more pilots from that faction, they'll become even better. Next we have a brand new C2 who has the ball gown, who's part of the Britannian faction. She has really good attack stats, but those abilities are kind of iffy. I think the first one is good, but the ability to keep removing the effects of the enemies, I think it's okay, but I would have liked something else that was similar to what Rakshata does from the last half anniversary event. That pilot was really good, and this C2 is as well, just not to the same extreme. The real reason why this C2 is really good is because she comes with a brand new Mewoudred with cat ears, which is called the Mewoudred or something, which is a really stupid name. But the Mewoudred is not stupid. It has the same base range as the current Mewoudred, but the special is way better and it has more attack power. But it does not include the melee weapon that the Mewoudred has, so that's how they balanced it out. In my opinion, this is a really good Nightmare frame and is also exclusive to the event, just like the Zero Kagori. So pretty good stuff there, at least for the Nightmare frame. I'm a little iffy on the new C2. Also, that new Nightmare frame obviously boosts C2 skill to level 5 and will work on all C2s, which is really good. There are also 2 new free units in the game, a brand new main character and his new Nightmare frame, the Gawain Castle. Both of them can be acquired from the store by spending resources you get within the game. You don't have to use your real money, and as long as you play every single day, they're technically free to acquire. The new main character is really powerful because they have a global healing ability that works on everyone not only within range, but just in general, and they are a multi-tool that reduces the cost to deploy any pilot from any faction. So really good stuff. And the Gawain, while only having a melee weapon, is still very powerful, and of course will boost the skill of any of the main character pilots. So really good stuff. I would have preferred a ranged weapon instead of melee, but I didn't think that was going to happen. By the way, this Gawain was the result of a poll where you could vote which pilot and Nightmare frame would you like to see together that are not normally together, and I believe the main character plus the Gawain won, which is why we got the Gawain Castle. Really good stuff, and for free units, I can't complain. So the half anniversary event has 2 parts, and in the second part, they are going to make all the past Nightmare frames that you could have won from the past Nightmare frame boss battle events available to be purchased in the guild shop with the guild medals, just like the Magdola. This is really good for anyone who joined the game late on the Japanese side and missed some of the past Nightmare frame boss events. Unfortunately, they don't have the latest one we just got, but that's not a huge deal. And even now, some of those Nightmare frames are still really powerful, especially the Gekka, the Starland Blue Baron, of course the Lancelot Fly enabled version. So this is really awesome, especially someone like myself who's a hoarder of guild medals as I never spend them, so for me it's an absolute treat. You can also purchase the ranged weapon for the Magdola, which is a Nightmare frame piloted by Carly, who's the main character's aunt. Before this, you could only buy the Magdola's melee weapon from the store. Now you get the ranged weapon. I'm not sure how that's going to work. Maybe something like what they did with the Borai or the Guard Mark II, where you buy the Nightmare frame, turn to a cube, and then upgrade the other Nightmare frame. I assume that's how it's going to go down if you have to buy them separately, but again, I don't know for sure. That'd be my guess though. The next thing to talk about are the buffs they gave to the Nightmare frames and the pilots. The first pilot that got a buff was Gino. This is the first Gino you could acquire in the game and just came out in the global version in the Knights of the Round event. This is technically the second buff he's gotten since he got one in the first year anniversary event. And I imagine the reason why he got a buff and Anya and Bismarck and Shinkei and so forth was so they wouldn't have to release the pilot again, or I should say release a stronger version of that pilot. And this of course has to be done because they released those pilots so early in the game before they actually debuted in the show that they had to eventually compensate for the fact that the game has gotten a lot harder, but these pilots can't compete anymore, even though they should because these are some of the best pilots in the series. So a really strange thing they did there by releasing them really early on in the game, but now they have to come in there and fix them several times so they can actually be competitive now in the game when they were supposed to have been if you follow the story chronologically. Anyways, let's go over Gino's updates. So the cost increase ability happens immediately upon deployment. Gino now increases your cost by 11 instead of 9, I believe, and he also reduces the cost to deploy any members of the Knights of the Realm by 2. These new updates are solid, and there's even another reason for them, which I'll get to later. Next we have is Anya, who got many buffs as well. They increased her defense, agility, and her remote attack dexterity, or long range as I like to call it. And she now decloaks every 10 seconds instead of every 30 seconds. And I believe with the new agility updates, she now attacks more enemies much faster now, which is really good. Because as I mentioned before, one of the problems with Anya is that she's kinda slow. So this fixes those issues. The decloak ability is so good now because before it was an absolute pain in the ass. You had to time Anya perfectly to decloak lots of enemies, and now that's every 10 seconds instead of 30. It's actually really useful. However, we already have Euphemia in the game, who's a rank 3 pilot that on deployment decloaks all pilots currently on the battlefield. That Euphemia is technically a limited character, so you probably don't have her if you just start playing the game right now. But still, I have to mention the fact that we already have a better decloaker, so this buff is really good, but a little too late in my opinion. Next we have his Bismarck, who hasn't changed that much since his first year anniversary update, aside from more health at over 7,000 and defense which is over 500. So he's an even stronger tank than before, and still remains the strongest attacker in the game, and obviously the Giga Chad. Next is Chigisa? I'm not sure how to pronounce her name, but that's the persona that Valletta takes when she loses her memory. She's a healer we're going to get later on in the global release, and she is a ground healer at that. So they improved her attack power to over 900, they improved her health stats, they increased the interval at which she attacks so she can heal much faster, and they also improved her action speed self buff. So good stuff there. I don't use her that much and probably still won't in the future, but I'm glad they did improve her in case other players only have her as an option as a really solid ground healer. Next is Shinkai, who got a ton of updates. First of all, his range attack and his melee attack are both over 1,000, which means he combos well with the melee and the ranged weapon of the Shenhu. They improved his agility and his dexterity, which is really good because the melee weapon of the Shenhu attacks really fast. So combine that with Shinkai and you have quite a powerful weapon. And as I said before, they're not going to release a new Shinkai, hence why they had to give him this buff. Next is Tianzi, who they increased her range attack power to over 1,000. She also reduces the cost of everyone in the Chinese Federation faction by 16 or 18 depending on her skill level, which makes sense because we have pilots like Suzaku who does that for Lido and Schnee, and Miss X who does that for Orpheus, so it makes sense she would do that for everyone in the Chinese Federation, which is only 3 pilots and probably will only be 3 pilots for a long time. So while it's a really powerful ability, it's very limited in scope. And speaking of that, they also added a brand new ability where she will increase the health of everyone in the Chinese Federation by 35%. And that's on top of the fact that she already increased everyone's health by 35% who was in range. So theoretically, if you have her behind Shinkai, that's an increase of 70%, which is really powerful. And she is a healer type, so it makes sense that she would be behind Shinkai. And the final character that got a buff was Schneizel. Not the rank 3 one, but the rank 4 one with the glasses. So the first change they made is that on deployment, he will increase the attack power of everyone who's deployed, not just within range anymore, which is really powerful. And his cost reduction of everyone in the Britannian faction is now 4 instead of 3. These changes are really good because before this, he could only buff the attack power of everyone who was in range of him when he was deployed. Now it's a global increase. Does this mean I'll use him going forward? Maybe, but I don't know if it's worth limit breaking him. But still, these are really nice updates. Next, let's talk about the Nightmare Frames and the buffs they got. Let's start with the Byakuin, which got a ranged weapon, which is similar to the Mewoudred, although the 3x3 grid is slightly further ahead than usual, and there's nothing in the middle, which is kind of odd. But still, it's kind of a cool range, and the special range is exactly the same. Also, if you upgrade this weapon plus the melee weapon stats will be even stronger, as is the case with other Nightmare Frames like this. Next is the Tristan, which hasn't changed too much since the first year anniversary update, aside from the fact that if you use Geno, the special will now attack 3 enemies, dealing 4 times your attack power, plus dealing 9,999 damage on top of that. Before this, it didn't deal fixed damage, and now it does, so that's pretty good. Especially when you consider that Geno will increase his Nightmare Frame skill gauge by 100% every couple seconds, Well, not a couple seconds, I think it's like 10 to 20. So when you put it like that, you're dealing more damage at a frequent rate, which is really good. Next is the Galahad, which got its first buff in the game because it didn't get one in the first year anniversary. So now the special will still attack 3 enemies, and it will deal 11 times your attack power and deal 19,999 damage. And this only occurs if Bismarck is piloting the Nightmare Frame. I cannot overstate how insane it is that the Nightmare Frame now deals 19,999 fixed damage over the past, 9,999 damage, and does 11 times your attack power. That's crazy to me. Now, obviously they're doing this because enemies are stronger now, especially bosses, so this Nightmare Frame has to compete with that. And as I said earlier, they have to do this to compensate for the fact that they released these Nightmare Frames too early in the game, and now we're at the point in the story where they should be much stronger, but the game is already harder, so they had to compensate for that by buffing the Nightmare Frames, and that's why we're here. Next, let's talk about the challenge missions. There are currently 4 in the game that are faction exclusive, which is Black Knights, Britannia, Ashford, and the Royal Family. We are going to get a 5th one, which is exclusive to the Knights of the Round, which is complete garbage, and let me tell you why. There are only 16 members in the game, which you might say, hey, that's not too bad, that's kind of a lot to choose from. But consider the fact that only 5 of them are rank 3s, which means 11 of them are rank 4s, and 6 of the 16 characters are limited, which means you only have 10 to choose from, and like I said, most of those are rank 4s. And on top of all that, they only buffed the main Knights of the Round members. We didn't get any new buffs for Monica, Nodded, Bradley, or Dorothea when they really needed one. And the same goes with our Nightmare Frames. Yes, we had the first year anniversary update, but the Palamedes and the Lancelot Club didn't get anything from that, and they still don't. Can someone please explain to me why they can't give the Palamedes right now the same base range as the Sarlin? It went power creep the Sarlin in that respect because it still costs way more to deploy. And at this point in the game, it wouldn't even be used anyways. If you told me the Palamedes had the same base range as the Sarlin, I probably still wouldn't use it as much, even though the base attack is 300, because there's just better Nightmare Frames out there in the game, and also the enemies are even harder now, so without fixed damage, it still wouldn't be that great. But they won't do that. So that Nightmare Frame is still not good, and the Lancelot Club, which is also in desperate need for an upgrade, didn't get one either. And like I said, the 4 pilots didn't get one either as well. They have to be updated for the times. Let's not forget how powerful Bradley was in the show, especially with the Percival, and in the manga, Nodded is very powerful, almost on the same level as Uldren, but you wouldn't know that from her terrible stats and terrible Nightmare Frame. If you're going to have challenge missions for members of the Knights of the Round, then you have to make the ones easier to acquire actually competent. I don't know what missions we're going to get, but I imagine the extra ones will be nearly impossible. Another thing to note is that while you have Gino and Anya who do increase your cost, you don't have a passive cost increaser in this faction, and the Knights of the Round are very expensive to deploy. So unless they're going to add no cost as the enhancement for the challenge maps, this is going to be absolutely insane to do because they're all so damn expensive. I'm really annoyed with this. The Royal Family Challenge missions was already pushing it, but at least we had more options to choose from. But here you have almost nothing. It's nearly impossible. No, it is impossible to put together a full team if you don't have all the rank 4s, which is bullshit. You then might ask, okay, what would you suggest the 5th week of challenges should be? And I would say maybe limit the characters by gender, or maybe by rank 3 and below and no 4s. I like that twist, but doing Knights of the Round is such garbage because we're so limited. So I sound kind of lukewarm with all these updates because I'm glad they're doing it, but they're very pick and choose with this stuff. I think if you're going to buff the Knights of the Round, you should buff all of them and all their Nightmare Frames. Don't just pick 3 of them, do all of them. These are supposed to be the best pilots in the entire Britannia military, which is the strongest in the entire world. So why are only 3 of them getting significant buffs at this time? They all should. I've ranted enough about this, but I'm not happy with these updates, and I wish they were more generous with how they update certain characters. It seems like they're gung-ho to improve all the rank 4s, but they forget that rank 3 still exist. This has been a problem for a long time now, and it seems like it's only getting worse. I was actually really surprised we got 2 rank 3 characters in the Akito banner. I was like, oh my god, rank 3s? I thought they were extinct. Besides, of course, the event exclusive pilots. Now we also have to talk about how the event itself works. There's a step up banner which is paid only, which is complete garbage. I'm not doing it, especially when it's missing certain pilots in the game, which is kind of garbage to me. At least they're giving 10 free summons every single day, or if you don't summon on the particular day, it stacks. So you can have them all at one time or do one every single day, which is really good. I think it's 150 pulls, which again is really good. There is also a new side story for C2, which explains how she went to the ball with Marion, and that's why she's wearing that outfit. And they also said that December 5th is going to be a birthday event. I assume that means it's for Lelouch. So those are the 1.5-year anniversary updates to KOTR Lost Stories. A bit of a mixed bag in my opinion, but at least they're improving some aspects of the game. If you are new to KOTR Lost Stories, the global release, and you just started playing it today, then check out my comprehensive guide on the game. And if you've been playing it since the game just came out, then check out my video right here, where I go over all the new Knights of the Round members from the current banner. Watch those videos right now.